Hello, I'm Ray. Welcome to another podcast episode. This time talking about history. Not just the history of the world, but your own personal history, all sorts of history. And mistakes, looking back on your personal mistakes. Do you learn from history? Do you learn from mistakes? More on that later. There'll also be a lot of other stuff. Trams, trains, potholes, would you believe? Potholes? There's a subject. Start off with a weather report. Where are we? 16C, 61 Fahrenheit. That's quite nice today. 76% humidity, 1018 on the barometer, and the flag is not doing a lot. Just swinging around the pole, trying to wrap itself around the pole. Okay, let's begin. The response I've had from the midweek message about the Isle of Wight, do you know, I did a couple of audio clips, do you remember, from the Isle of Wight? The response I had was quite incredible. So many of you loved it. I didn't put a great deal of effort into it, to be honest. I just wandered around, for example, Quor Abbey, and said, oh, there's the bell, you can hear the bell. I didn't really go into it a great deal. And, of course, my visit to St Mildred's Church was interesting. And I must admit, listening back to the audio clips, I should have gone into a bit more of the history. When the church was built, what happened, a little bit more about it, and about Quor Abbey and other places I visited. Perhaps go into it a little bit more to make it more interesting. So what I did, I put all the audio clips together. You've probably heard it by now. I think it's about 15 minutes worth. I put all the audio clips together in order so you can listen to the whole thing about the Isle of Wight. It's a separate podcast, which you've probably seen by now. Look out for that one. I think it's called My Trip to the Isle of Wight or something. But the response was incredible. I didn't think anyone would be interested, to be honest. How wrong I was. When I visit interesting places in the future, I'll take my little portable recorder with me and do a little bit of a sort of running commentary on what's going on. Only interesting places, so as not to bore you. And I'm calling it Ray's Roaming Rants. I thought that was quite good. Tricia thought of that. Ray's Roaming Rants. It won't be a regular feature such as the midweek message every Wednesday, but every now and then it'll pop up on the list of podcast episodes. So keep an eye out for that. And a little bit more news for you, some more information. Over the years, you've said, can you send me a picture of Amberley Museum? I've never seen it. Can you send me a picture of that castle you went to, or that harbour, that beach you went to? I would like to have a look. And what I've done, I've sent people photographs. I've emailed them to people. But what I'm doing now, photographs, information, video clips, all that sort of thing, will be in one place, www.raysrants.info, I-N-F-O. I'm hoping the page will be up and running by the time you hear this on Sunday, but if not, it will take a little time to get it going. If not, just make a note of the URL and come back and check during the week. You'll be able to go there, look at photographs, video clips, bits of information and all sorts of things like that. Also, which you might find helpful, on that page will be listed all the podcast episodes. You can scroll down the entire list and listen to anything you want. So hopefully that'll be useful as well. Now let's move on. History. History's a funny thing, isn't it? After World War II, everyone said, never again, never again. So what happens? There's wars all over the place. We don't learn, do we, from history? Mankind, if I'm allowed to say that, okay, humankind, people-kind, whatever they are, don't seem to learn from history, from previous mistakes. It's the same with people, with individuals. Do you learn from your history? I mean, we've all got a history, haven't we? I've got a history of marriage, having children, buying houses, going to work, repairing vintage valve radios. We've all got history. If you look back at mistakes you've made, have you learnt from those mistakes? I know several people who have made major mistakes in their lives. And what do? They don't learn from their mistakes. They go and make the same mistakes again. It's strange, isn't it, how we just don't learn from history. When I was at Yarmouth Castle on the Isle of Wight, a chap said to me, do you know why the castle was built here? Did I tell you this? I think I told you this, didn't I? And I said, no, go on, why was it built here? Because the French kept coming up the Solent in their boats and attacked us. So we built a castle here, put cannons on it, and we could shoot them out of the water with our cannons. and that stopped them coming up the channel. OK, the French don't attack us anymore, but there are people attacking other people, aren't there, all over the place. No one seems to learn from history, from mistakes, from anything. All they seem to do is increase their defences and their weaponry. Have you made mistakes in the past? I think most of us have. What have you learnt from your mistakes? Raise rants at protonmail.com. Be interesting. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. Have I learnt from... Probably not. I'm just trying to think, what's the biggest mistake Oh yes, I remember the biggest mistake I ever made. I better not mention that. Might get into trouble. I went to the doctor the other day. This isn't... Well, it is sort of history related in a way. And I had to have a blood test, just a routine blood test, and the nurse was there. Lovely nurse, very friendly, explained what was happening. And she said, you might just feel a little scratch. And I thought, no, it's not a scratch. A scratch would be if you put the tip of the needle on my skin and then dragged it. That is a scratch. If you stick the needle into my skin, that is a prick. OK, that is the old word. That is history. History says that there's a difference between scratching and pricking with a needle or a pin. I suppose it's not history really, is it? It's the dictionary says that. That's what the dictionary says. But it's sort of history. Things are changing. In the old days, you'd go to the nurse and she'd stick a needle in you and say you might feel a little prick. That's the way it was back then. That was the truth. That was using the English language correctly. But of course we can't say that now. Someone might take offence. I wouldn't take offence. I've been called far worse. Happy days. I hope to be going up to Clapham Church. I think it's Clapham Trinity Church. West Sussex, look it up on the map. Clapham, not Clapham Junction where all the trains are. Down here, near where I am, Clapham. There's a lovely church there. I'm going to take my recorder there and tell you all about it. It's in the woods, what they call the Bluebell Woods, Clapham Bluebell Woods. There's Clapham Woods where there's ghosts. That's been all on the TV and goodness knows what. Ghosts and spooks and stuff everywhere. I'm not talking about that. This is the Bluebell Woods. There's a little village, Clapham Village, a tiny village, only a few houses, and the church is kind of down a farm track in the woods. It's rather an odd arrangement. I must look up the history of it. I've been there several times, but Trish hasn't been there. I'm sure she has. When she gets there, I'm hoping to go tomorrow. When she gets there, she'll say, oh yeah, I've been here. I'm sure she's been there. It's a lovely church built in the 12th century, so 1100 and something. And if I remember rightly, on the wall there's a big wooden sort of plaque thing with all are they reverends, vicars, whatever they are, all their names going back to, I can't remember, hundreds of years ago. So I'm hoping to get up there. Where are we? Possibly tomorrow. Depends on the weather. I don't know what the weather's doing half the time. There's a terrific wind now coming from the west. And there's a fly in here. If you hear buzzing, it's not an audio problem. It's a fly that's come in to say hello. I've just looked up Clapham Church. Don't forget to type in West Sussex if you do look it up. It says St Mary the Virgin. So I don't know. Why do things change? It was Clapham Church. Then it was Trinity. I don't know. Now it's St Mary the Virgin. Perhaps it's me. Perhaps I'm looking it up all wrong. But it is annoying, isn't it? As I'm always moaning about pubs. The Fountain in the town is now the Slug and Lettuce. Stone the crows. There are so many places to go in the British Isles. You don't have to go abroad. Probably the same where you are. New Zealand, America, Australia, all the places where you are. You probably find that there are lovely places to go. You don't have to go to an airport, queue up for hours and then find your planes cancelled or delayed and all that nonsense. Just drive a few miles and there's all sorts to see. Loads of stuff around here. For example, Clapham Church is, 10-minute drive, maybe 15 at the most, depending on the traffic, of course. Oh, huge traffic problems again. Roads all being closed everywhere. Oh, dear. I think I'll sell the car and just stay here. Don't go out anywhere. I did once, many years ago. We decided we didn't need the car, and the house we had at the time had a garage, and we stuck it in the garage for 2 years. It was a bit awkward sometimes, but it was lovely. No petrol to worry about, no maintenance to worry about. Eventually, we got it back on the road. It was funny, the old leather seats, I'm going back a few years, of course, they'd gone mouldy. I opened the car door and it smelt of mould and musty and horrible. It soon cleaned up, though. Checked everything over, charged the battery, and off we went again. That was a Morris Oxford. And old Maurice Oxford, that's going back a few years. Well, you've probably heard the news, general election coming up. Oh dear, politics. There's going to be nothing on the TV and radio but politics the whole time. This party does that party does this, he said that, vote for us. Oh, I used to be interested in politics many years ago. Now it's just a waste of time. Everyone that you meet, everyone I've mentioned it to, oh, we got an election. Oh, I'm not voting, can't be bothered with it. They're all as bad as each other, I'm not voting. So I don't know what's going to happen. They've chosen a funny date for it, 4th of July, American Independence Day. Why choose the 4th of July? Don't know, not interested, can't be bothered. I should take up fishing instead of watching telly and listening to the radio. Well, I might listen to pirates on the radio. Now, they are worth listening to. What am I doing? I'm inciting illegalities. Is there such a word? As I said, I'm not interested in politics, but I am becoming increasingly interested in history, as is Jenny. Hello, Jenny. You emailed me the other day. You listened to the audio stuff I did on the Isle of Wight, and you're talking about the Roman villa. Now, I didn't say much about the Roman villa, but you wanted to know a little bit more. One thing that struck me was this outbuilding, like an outhouse, and I went and had a look at that. It's a few yards away from the sort of main building. I suppose there's no other word for it really than a boiler house. I looked in there, you couldn't go in there, it's only a small place, but what they did in there was lit fires to heat water. Then the water was piped into the main building. That's amazing, isn't it? All those years ago, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the Romans had a boiler house, just like we do these days. And the mosaic floor, that was amazing. You could see the walls. They were only about, 2 feet high, 3 feet high, what was left of them, because obviously the whole thing had been knocked down to ground level and someone's dug it all out and exposed the mosaic floors. Apparently it was discovered, something happened in 1800 and something, when they destroyed some of the mosaic flooring by mistake. They were digging away, I don't know what they were digging for, and I suppose they dug up some of the flooring, and someone said, oh, look what you've done, look, that's hundreds of years, look what you've done, it's thousands of years old, you've ruined the floor. Well, I didn't mean to, Gov, yeah, well, you're sacked. I don't know. Anyway, I'm talking rubbish, aren't I? But amazing place, Jenny. There's not much else I can tell you about it. I have taken some photographs of the floor, so what I'll be doing is putting those on the webpage when it's up and running, www.raysrants.info. My podcast episodes are all about the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I suppose, 90s, but also anything old, anything historic, mainly obviously in Britain, because that's where I live. And judging by your emails, it does seem that you're all interested in British history, the old days, not only the 50s, 60s, etc., but before that. That's why I think my visit to the Core Abbey, the church and the rest of it is interesting to you. To the majority of you anyway. One or two have said, oh no, I don't want to hear about old churches. Who was it? Oh, Dave. Hello, Dave. You said I'm not interested in old churches. I think we're back to, you can please some of the people some of the time. No, what is it? And all the people, I don't know what, I always get that wrong. You can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. That's it. Yay. So yes, what I'm trying to say is that anything historic about the British Isles, whether it be old churches, monasteries, forts. There are a lot of forts around. There's Shoreham Fort, Newhaven Fort. There are forts everywhere that were built, I don't know when. Take, for example, a different thing altogether, but Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover. In there, have you been there? Dover Castle. There are tunnels where Winston Churchill used to go there. And you can see rooms all dug out of the chalk. Of course, it was all top secret at the time, these tunnels. We went there and had a look, and you can actually go to the end and look out over the sea, because that was an ideal lookout spot for, the enemy coming across the channel. And they've got the rooms in there, the old Bakelite telephones with the desks, and it's just amazing. It's all left exactly as it was. It's really interesting. I'll have to get over there at some stage with my recorder and bore you with half an hour of Dover What is it? It's Dover Castle. I don't know what they call the tunnels. I suppose it's all part of the castle. Very interesting anyway. It's Friday morning, by the way, just out of interest. 8 o'clock Friday morning. Beautiful day, bit of sunshine out there, blue sky, a few fluffy clouds. And the flag is sort of a little breeze from the east. It's just blowing gently. That reminds me, Trish was in the front driveway getting something out of the car the other day. I was in the lounge just watching, and a car drove past and then reversed back. And he was talking to her, this chap, and I thought he might want directions. And I went out there, and what it was, he said to her, "Why are you flying that flag? The Union flag. It's not a Union Jack. It's a Union Jack when it's on board a ship, isn't it? Because is it on the Jack? So when it's sort of on land, it's a Union flag. You know, it's the British flag. We all know that, don't we?" And she said, "Well, we put it up originally for the Queen's Jubilee or whatever it was." And he said, "Oh, so it's to do with the royal family." And she said, "Well, it's just a flag." And he said, is it political?" And I went a little bit further. He could see me, and I went a little bit further because I thought I won't join in because I'll probably start rowing with him. So I just listened. He said, "Oh, as long as it's not political." So I did say, "Well, why would a flag be political? It's the Union flag. It's nothing to do with any particular political party. It's nothing to do with that. It's the Union flag." And he said, "Oh, I just thought it might be a political statement." And I said, "No, it's a flag." Then he said one last thing. He said this to Trish because I walked off. I thought I'm not going to get involved. You know, I might start saying something I regret. I just walked back a little bit, and he said to Trish, "One last question. If I flew a flag outside my house, a flag of a different country, would you mind?" And she's funny, Trish. She said, "Do what the hell you like. I don't care what you do at your house. I don't even know where you live." And he said, "Oh, all right," and drove off. It's a flag. The trouble is these days, no, we won't go into that. We won't go into flags and things these days because we'll get into trouble. Well, I'll get into trouble. People have to be so careful these days with what you say. You have to watch your words. Don't say this, don't say that. Anyway, the flag is still flying, and I can see it here, and there's a breeze from the west. What I can talk about is trams. Hello, Rob, down under in Melbourne. How are you? Hope you're keeping well. You liked the train episode, but you mentioned trams. Now, we did have trams. First of all, tell you a little story. I want to tell you a story. My mum, when she was 14, she had a paper round. Her family didn't have a great deal of money, so she did this paper round, saved the money each week, and bought a bicycle. As she calls it, a drop handle type bicycle, you know, racing bike with the drop handles. And she would cycle from Sutton in Surrey, where she lived, down to Brighton and back. When she's 14 years old, she loved her bike. She cycled to school and back on her bike. Excellent. Until one day, now this is where trams come in, one day she'd been to see her older sister, was cycling home, and there were tram lines, you know, like railway lines in the road, and her front wheel of her bicycle got into one of the lines. You know, there's a gap in the middle. It's like two metal rails with a gap in the middle, isn't it? The front wheel of the bicycle went into the gap between the rails, and the wheel locked. She went over the handlebars, hit the back or hit a lorry. I'm not sure whether the lorry was moving or whatever. And she woke up 2 days later in hospital. She'd been unconscious, or I don't know whether it was a coma or what, but unconscious for 2 days. And she woke up in hospital, looked round, you know, where am I? There's a policeman sitting by the bed. And he said, "What happened?" She said, "I don't know. I was waving goodbye to my sister, and next minute I'm here. What happened? You tell me." He said, "Well, your bike's wrecked." And her boyfriend at the time, he was very nice. He collected her bike from the police station, but it was a write-off. Apparently the front wheel was wrecked, everything was wrecked, which was a great shame. You know, she'd been saving up, paying every week for the bike out of the paper round money. But that, she just happened to, I saw her the other day, and she happened to be talking about trams. And Rob, obviously down under in Melbourne, you mentioned trams. We did have trams, not down here on the coast where I am. As far as I know, we've never had trams down here. There is in Brighton, right the way along the seafront, which was put there in 1800 and whatever, Volks Railway. I think that's Volks or ES, Volks Railway. I believe it's still there, runs all the way along the beach. I used to go on that as a kid. But trams, I don't think we had them down here, not anywhere, Brighton or anywhere. But they were up in London, of course, and in places in Surrey, Sutton, Cheam, Carshalton, all that lot. They had trams. They also had trolley buses. Now, a trolley bus, if you don't know, if you're outside the UK, you probably don't know what a trolley bus is. It's an ordinary double-decker bus, but it's electric with a couple of, was it the pantograph thing on top, which hooks onto a couple of wires, and it gets its electricity from there. So it's an ordinary bus with pneumatic tyres, ordinary bus in every way, except it hasn't got an engine, it's got a motor, gets the power from the overhead lines. They were apparently introduced in 1931 and they lasted until 1962. That's interesting. I didn't think they went on for that long. I remember them in the 50s, early 60s when I went up to visit my nan up there. I remember the trolley buses. They were great fun. And the London system of trolley buses was the largest in the world, apparently. 68 routes they had with a maximum fleet of 1,811 trolley buses, 1,800 trolley buses. They had rapid acceleration. I do remember that, sitting on the bus, and when the driver took off from the bus stop, you're off. Like the underground trains, they've got rapid acceleration. They were fantastic. So what happened? Some idiot, here we go, some idiot behind a desk, he said, well, get rid of all the trolley buses. We don't want those electric things, wires all over the streets. Well, go diesel. Right, that was the beginning of the decline, wasn't it? Diesel. Now, in those days, diesel engines were not at all refined as they are these days. Back then, you follow a bus or a lorry, the diesel fumes, black smoke pumping out of the back of the exhaust pipe, billowing out of the back of the vehicle. And I do remember hearing on the radio somewhere back in the 60s, you follow a lorry for 10 minutes, it's the equivalent of smoking a packet of cigarettes. And that stuck in my mind because I did smoke at the time. And whenever I saw a lorry in front belching out all this filthy black smoke, I used to think of that. I'd keep well back or stop and wait till he got out of sight because I didn't want to smoke a whole packet of cigarettes in 10 minutes. Apparently it was 1954 when it was announced that all trolley buses were to be replaced by diesel buses. I didn't realise it was that early. I suppose it took a long time to get rid of all the old trolley buses. I don't suppose they could convert them. Could they put diesel engines in them? I'm not sure. Have to look that one up. I shall add that to my book of things to look up at some stage. But isn't that crazy? We had electric buses. I remember the wires, the overhead lines, all over the streets, the main streets, of course. And where there were dividing roads, one bus might go on that route, another one on this route, the wires obviously had to divide. And I remember as a kid looking up, watching the two poles going up to each line. I remember watching and thinking, how does that go from that direction then change route to that direction? And I was fascinated by them. I don't know what voltage they worked on. I don't know what voltage there was in the overhead wires. But the wires, of course, in the middle of the town, the wires were supported by other wires going from building to building. So one above that shop, across the road to above that shop. And then that would support the two sets of lines. Where there were no buildings, they had poles and all sorts. And I do remember thinking, all the wires above the streets, it did look a bit of a mess. But of course, that's far better than diesel fumes all in your face everywhere. As I said, diesel engines back then, they weren't refined. They were noisy. They were filthy things. And half of them weren't tuned up properly. You get a bus come up to the bus stop and the engine, instead of just ticking over, it'd be going vroom, vroom, vroom. That's not a very good noise, is it? Not a very good sound effect, I know. But instead of just going vroom, it was vroom, vroom, as if he's putting his foot on the throttle and taking it off again. And of course the fumes are all belching out in the middle of the town. It was dreadful. Lorries, of course, any large vehicle had diesel engine rather than petrol. So they got rid of all the electric buses and brought in filthy diesel. What a great idea. I wonder who that was behind the desk that came up with that great idea. Obviously Mr. Idiot. Fair enough, the overhead lines, the wires everywhere were a bit of a mess, but you didn't notice them walking around. And the whole thing was clean. You didn't need a battery on the bus that needed charging. I don't know much about electric cars. I haven't really looked into it. I haven't got one. I don't want one. But I have seen online, you see these videos, you see a vehicle parked by the end of the road, by the roadside, and a diesel generator charging the battery. Well, that sort of defeats the object, doesn't it? What's the point of having a diesel generator to charge your electric car or your electric lorry or whatever? And I've seen other videos, I don't know whether they're true, you don't know what to believe these days. I saw one recently, a row of buses, electric buses, one of them's on fire and all the others caught fire. There's these vehicles, I've seen a lot of videos where electric vehicles go up in flames. Is that true? Does anyone know? Raise rants at protonmail.com. Do you know of anyone whose electric car has burst into flames? I don't know enough about electric cars to comment, or any electric vehicles, but the trolley buses, no batteries on board, nothing like that. They picked up the power from the overhead lines, which seems to me a clean way of doing it, because the overhead lines got their electricity from a substation, the national grid from a substation. So there were no extra charging points and generators and all this stuff. I don't know. I must look into electric cars. I did hear the other day that they run on about 600 volts. Is that right? Apparently they've got an inverter on board and the motors are 600 volts. So that's quite high. You don't want to go poking around under the hood, as you'd say out in the US, or here under the bonnet. If there's 600 volts hanging around, that could be rather nasty. Talking of transport, as we seem to be doing, when we were on the Isle of Wight, what was missing from the roads? Have a guess. What was missing? I'll tell you, because you'll never guess. Potholes. We saw, now this is totally true, because Trish and I were both looking out for potholes. We saw 3. And the entire week we were there, 3 potholes. And they were only minor. Isn't that amazing? 3 potholes. All the roads out there, they had a road scheme, an Isle of Wight road rebuilding scheme or something over a number of years. And the roads are beautiful. The majority of them are beautiful. Lovely to drive on. They're smooth, perfect, really, really nice. Having come from here, pothole land, where I live, pothole central, it was just so nice to be able to drive there without having to lean forward and keep searching the road. Where's a pothole? Oh, there's one. Hang on, missed that. Swerve round that one. It was lovely to be able to sit back, relax and drive the car and enjoy the Isle of Wight without potholes everywhere, wrecking your suspension. There we are, such is life. There's a chap on telly, isn't there? They call him Mr. Pothole. I think he's a campaigner. He runs this anti-pothole or whatever campaign, and they call him Mr. Pothole, which is funny. I said earlier I was going to go up to Clapham Church and have a look around the church, take my little recorder with me. And then Trish said to me, "You want to go up to Clapham Church?" I said, "Well, yes, what's the problem?" She said, "Do you realise what this weekend is?" No, what? Bank holiday weekend. Do not go out in your car bank holiday weekend. You will regret it. Big time. Big time. That's a funny expression. And I thought, that's it. She's right. I'm not going up there. It's only up the road. But you've got to go across the A259, across the A27 and all that business to get to Clapham Village. I'm not doing that. Bank holiday weekend, the roads are mental. They're mental when there is no bank holiday, but the sun's out as well. Bank holiday weekend on the roads, forget it. So the plan is we're going to go up there Tuesday morning. We're going to pick my mother up and have a look at Clapham Woods, the Bluebell Woods. There won't be there might be bluebells now. No, they've just about finished. Take my mum up there. She can have a look at the church because she loves the woods and all that business. Then we'll bring her back here for lunch, which will be rather nice, and we can sit in the garden because where she is in her flat, she doesn't have a garden. So she can come and enjoy ours for a while. Just going back to trams, well, they weren't trams, trolley buses with the overhead wires. The railway system here at Southern Railway, we don't have the overhead wires for the trains. We've got what they call the third rail, the conductor rail. So you've got the 2 running rails, and then by the side of one of them is a conductor rail, and they've got sort of metal shoes that run on them. So that picks up the electricity, and the return is through the running rails. That's for those of you that are interested in electrical things, as I am. So down here, it's very dangerous. Well, it's dangerous anywhere to wander around on the railway line, but especially here because you've got 750 volts DC, again, for those interested in that sort of thing, 750 volts DC just on the ground there. So you're stepping across the railway lines, you touch that and you're what is it, brown bread? Your toast or something. I don't know, brown bread, isn't it? You're gone, mort. Which isn't funny because it does kill people. There was a girl, I won't mention where, but I read some time ago, not too far from where I am. She wandered onto the railway line from the crossing. She was walking across the crossing, wandered onto the track and, I don't know, tripped or whatever she did and onto the live rail, and that was that. So you've got to be careful. Anywhere, I believe, north of London, it's all overhead wires, isn't it? Now, what are they? They're about 25,000, no, they're about 30,000 volts, I think. So you don't want to get up there and touch those. That would not be a good idea. And down from London, down towards the West Country, I don't think it was electrified till quite late. It was just diesel. Well, steam, and then diesel, of course. When there was steam, there was no electrification anywhere, obviously. They just had steam engines. Then the electric trains came in, and the diesels, of course, they didn't need electricity. But then the electric trains came in, so they started electrifying down here with the third rail, elsewhere with the overhead wires. And I don't know why I'm rambling on all about that. Well, it's history again, isn't it? It's history. It's all interesting. I find it interesting. How did the trams have like the pantograph thing with wires overhead? You know, I can't remember. Or were they, I don't know. I should look that up. There's something else. This book of mine, where I've got things to look up, is getting fuller and fuller. I'm going to need a second volume soon, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. Did you know that there is a pipeline from the Isle of Wight under the sea to France? They call it Pluto, and that stands for Pipeline Under the Ocean. Pipeline Under the Ocean. And what that was for, that was put there during World War II, apparently to pump petrol from here, from England, across to our troops in France, because they needed fuel, obviously. So they put this pipeline. That's amazing, isn't it? And you can actually see a little bit of it at Shanklin Shine. You can see a bit of it is exposed. It's still there. I don't think it's still under the sea. There's a piece of this pipe there, and they've written on it, Pluto. It's not huge. It's only a thinnish sort of pipe. I don't know what sort of pump they would have had to pump petrol all that way, because, OK, from Dover to Calais, it's about 23 miles. But from the Isle of Wight over to, where would it be, Le Havre or somewhere? I don't know, somewhere over there. That's a long way. So I don't know what sort of pump they would have had. Quite a big one, I would imagine. So that's interesting, isn't it? There's a little bit more history there. Trisha's sister and her husband, they've just been up to Scotland for 10 days. They hired a boat, and they've been not sailing. You don't sail in a motorboat, do you? I don't know, it's a small yacht type thing. Is it a yacht? Whatever it is, it's got an engine, and they sort of live on board. And they've been around Loch Ness and what is it? Is it the Cairngorm Canal? Something like that. They've been all over the place for 10 days. They were doing that. That's interesting. And now they're back. Next week, they're off to the New Forest for the week. Honestly, a little bit of sunshine, and that's it. People are off. We've been to the Isle of Wight, which was lovely. I'd like to go again. So everyone's off on their summer holes, which is good. What do you call it in America? Vacation, isn't it? You have your vacation. If ever you are down New Forest Way, have a look at Bewley Motor Museum. Is it Lord Montague? No, Lord Bewley, isn't it? Lord Bewley. This motor museum. Fantastic place if you like old cars. There's some history there for you. Stone the crows. There's all sorts of cars. Everything, you name it, is there. From sort of 1900 or earlier. Fascinating to look at these things. We've been there a few times. I love the New Forest. Wouldn't mind living in the middle of the forest, with the nearest neighbour 10 miles away. That would be rather nice, wouldn't it? I'm somewhat of a recluse, I know. Is it good or bad? I suppose it's bad. There was a programme on telly the other night, and there was a city dweller and I suppose a country dweller. And they were arguing, oh, the city's lovely, there's lights and there's music and there's stuff going on at night and it's wonderful. And the country dweller chap was saying, the countryside is beautiful. At night, you've got the owls coming out, there's wildlife doing things, the owls are hooting, the moonlight's shining, it's lovely. So you're never going to sort of convince each other, that's what they were saying. One likes the city, one likes the country. I like the countryside. Of course, we've got the countryside and the city. There's something else, isn't there? The beach. I've never liked the sea, I don't like the beach. But down in the West Country, what is it called? The Jurassic Coast, I believe, which is famous for fossils on the kind of cliffs or whatever it is there. Is it sandstone? Something else to look up. Got to be busy, aren't I? There are fossils everywhere. People just go there to collect fossils of all sorts of creatures from millions of years ago. That's interesting. Now, talking of history, the sort of history I like, yes, okay, in 1066 there was the Battle of Hastings and all that stuff. 1666, was it the Great Fire of London, or was that the Plague? Whichever, I can't remember. That history is sort of interesting. The Roman villa at Brading on the Isle of Wight, that was really interesting. Seeing the mosaic floor from hundreds, thousands of years ago by the Romans. But the history I like, now there's different types. There's recent history, isn't there? Modern history or something. Is it medieval or medieval history? I like the history where the dinosaurs, I mentioned that the other week, didn't I? Dinosaurs, where there were no people, no human beings, just dinosaurs. Imagine, here we go, if you will, imagine that asteroid that hit the Earth, that didn't happen, because that's what wiped out the dinosaurs, apparently. Say that hadn't happened, the dinosaurs had lived. Now, they're huge beasts, aren't they, obviously? Had they lived and ruled the Earth, as they were sort of doing at the time, what would have happened to humans when we came along? I don't think we'd have stood a chance. We couldn't have fought them, could we? We only had, what did we have in the way of weapons? Sticks and stones, I suppose. Back then, just throw rocks at them. Well, that wouldn't do much good. So the dinosaurs might well have ruled the Earth even now. Because if humans had been, when we came along, if the dinosaurs had done away with us, then I don't know, it's interesting, isn't it? I find that sort of thing interesting. And the other history I like is, this will get my son going, there we are, out in North Carolina there. We had a nice chat the other day. He's going to help me with this domain name business, raiserants.info. Hint, hint. Now, this is his sort of interest as well. Going back to the Big Bang Theory, I'm always saying, what happened to go bang? What was there that went bang? And he has told me, I don't know, theories or whatever he's discovered about it all. And I don't know, that sort of thing is interesting, the Big Bang. And these pictures, have you seen the pictures of Mars recently? The landscape, where the camera just pans the landscape. No people, no animals, no nothing, no life. Amazing. Imagine living there. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? No, that's a little bit too remote, even for someone like me. But it would be incredibly interesting, fascinating, to be able to go back in time to the dinosaurs and have a look, just have a look round. I've said all this before, haven't I? I don't know why I'm banging on about it now. No people. Wonderful. What a wonderful place to live. Anyway, the whole thing, the whole of history is ifs and buts, isn't it? If this had happened, if that hadn't happened, yeah, but this and but that. So many little things, if they hadn't happened in the past, could have made a huge difference to the way things are now. Some things just come to mind, talking of fighting the dinosaurs. Had we fought the dinosaurs? That is spelled F-O-U-G-H-T, isn't it? Fought, as in fight. I saw a BBC announcement the other day, somewhere online, I forget where it was, and they were talking about a fort, as in F-O-R-T. And how did they spell it? F-O-U-G-H-T. That's the BBC. Struth, what's the matter with them? These days, all grammar, syntax, punctuations, all seems to have gone out of the window. Talking of out of the window, look at that weather. You can't see it, can you? I'm going to add some more photographs to the web page today. Did you hear my elbow crack, or was that my neck or shoulder? Things start cracking when you get older. We've got blue sky, sunshine, beautiful. Put my shorts on in a minute. No, I won't put photographs on there of me in my shorts. You won't want to see that, I can promise you. But I'm going to put a few more photos on of various things that you might find interesting. So once we get the domain name sorted out and up and running, I'm going to get into trouble. I shall be told off soon if I keep on about that. But no, once it's up and running, I think you'll find it very interesting. Now, I've had an idea, and I know that no one will respond to this. If you have any photos you want put on the page, send them in to me. I doubt you'll want photos of yourself, but perhaps your garden or that sort of thing. Anything local to where you are, mountains, castles, whatever. I'll have to have a listener's photos page. That might be quite interesting for everyone. Ray's Rants at protonmail.com. Did I tell you, I can't remember, did I tell you I'm going on the Waverley steamship? It's a paddle steamer. I'm going on that in, when is it, September sometime, I forget the date, with a couple of friends of mine. That should be good. It leaves, where does it leave? Shoreham Harbour. Leaves there, it sails down to the Isle of Wight. We stop at Yarmouth, and I think we get off there and whatever we do there. And then it sails, does it go round to the Needles? I think, does it go right round the south? I don't know where it goes. But it's the Waverley, look that up, the Waverley paddle steamer. And it's not that expensive. I think it was £69 per person. Now, I can't swim, so I hope they supply life jackets. Isn't it awful at my age? I can't swim. You can go below deck and have a look at the engine, take photos or videos of the engine. Now, there's something else I shall put on the web page. Again, that's history, isn't it? There was a programme about Loch Ness, funnily enough. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law went on a boat, as I said, across Loch Ness. Now, that was a modern boat. There was a programme the other evening about these people, I forget their names, isn't it awful? They travel sort of from one end of the country or wherever to the other, only by steam, anything steam driven. So it can be a train with a steam engine. They had a steam car, which was interesting, a steam boat, and this boat's over 100 years old, and they went across the Loch Ness on this steam boat. It's quite an interesting programme. Oh, what's the chap's name? He played Doctor Who. He was also Tristan in All Creatures Great and Small. Davidson, I can't remember his name. Never mind, you'll know. Email me. No, don't email me his name. I can look it up. Peter Davidson, wasn't it? Peter Davidson. Yes, that's him. He was on there with a couple of other lads, and it's a good programme. There are some good programmes on the telly, aren't there? 99.9% of the stuff on TV is just total, utter, complete rubbish. But there is a small percentage, like 0.0001%, which is really worth watching. A little bit more history. Our house is just over 100 years old. And where it's built, this was all nursery land. Because back in the early days, where I am, Worthing, was known for tomatoes. It was known nationwide for tomato growing. It was called Sunny Worthing. That's why I called it Sunny Worthing. It still is Sunny Worthing. It's lovely. And there were greenhouses everywhere and nursery land. And apparently where our house is here, it was all nursery land. I don't know whether they had greenhouses here or not. But that's another fascinating thing to do. Look up online. In the old days, we only had encyclopedias, which were good, but it's nothing like it is now online. You can find maps and photographs and all sorts of things from the old days. And I have found maps of various towns along the coast here where I am. And you can see where I am now was a little fishing village, and the nurseries and orchards, tomato growing, all these things, fishing, everything. And of course it all developed. It develops, doesn't it? Towns develop around estuaries. We've got the River Arun and the River Ada each side of us. So that's where all the fishing took place, I suppose. That's where the boats went out from. Anyway, enough of that. I don't want to bore you, but it is interesting. Your local history, all sorts of history is interesting, isn't it? One thing that could have been a lot better is the railway. Now, the railway here was built in Victorian times, 1800 and whatever. What they did, they built the railway through the town, which kind of made sense at the time, I suppose, because it was probably a village. Now, when I went to Spain once, many years ago, I stayed at Lloret de Mar, just south of Barcelona, and I went on the train, and it was right on the seafront. So you didn't have cars and crossing gates. It was right on the seafront. No one wants to drive into the sea. They had pedestrian crossing things, but they put it right on the beach almost. Had they done that here, it would have been amazing. We wouldn't have had these crossing gates that are continually closed. One train goes by, you wait and wait and wait, then another one goes by. Are they going to open now? No, there's another train. The gates go up, few cars go through. Right, hang on, red lights, the gates are coming down, that's it, another train. Honestly, it's mental. It really is mental. It delays the police, ambulances, fire engines. Had they built the line right along the seafront, there's only pedestrians or whatever, and you could have little underpasses, couldn't you? Or little bridges over. That way it wouldn't delay the trains. And anyway, there we are. It's too late to change it now. Imagine trying to reroute the railway right the way along the coast. Move it all to the down near to the sea. That's not going to happen, is it? Just had an email from Warren. Hello, Warren. Warren sent me a link about British pubs and the British pint. You know, the good old British pint of beer. Thanks, Warren. I've had a quick look at the link. The video seized up. I think we've got internet trouble here, but I shall have a proper look at that in a minute. That's another thing I'll be able to do on the page, isn't it? Rants.info. I'll be able to put links such as Warren's one on there, which will be interesting for people as well, I hope. It should open up a lot of possibilities for the podcast episodes. Okay, I'm going to end it here. I know it's only 3/4 of an hour. Shall I tell you why? Because it is very hot out there. It's Saturday afternoon and it is very hot. I'm sitting here. It's a good job. I tell you what, it's a good job this isn't video. I'm sitting here in my shorts. That's all I've got on, shorts. Would you, no, don't picture that. I'm sorry, you're probably eating your breakfast wherever you are in the world, your lunch, your tea, your dinner. Happy days. There's a blue sky out there. It's beautiful weather. Mother-in-law has gone home. We've dealt with my mother. We've done everything. We're now going to go and sit in the shade somewhere in the garden, Trish and I think it's time for a beer and possibly a glass of wine for Tricia. Don't forget, if you want to contact me about anything, raiserants@protonmail.com. Thank you to all of those of you that have sent me links over the years, interesting links to videos on YouTube or wherever. I've had a lot of interesting videos to watch and bits and pieces, so thank you. Keep the links coming if you find anything of interest. Just a final report on the weather, well, a forecast actually. Tonight it's meant to be torrential rain all night, finishing about 6 or something in the morning, and then a beautiful day again tomorrow, Sunday tomorrow, when you'll be listening to this, of course. So that's what we need, a bit of rain for the garden tonight and then sunshine again tomorrow. I shall see you on Wednesday with the midweek message, of course. So in the meantime, take care, look after yourselves. Here we go, here's the nonsense. Be good, be bad, don't get caught, be happy, and above all, be healthy. Great talking to you all as always. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye for now.